Hello everyone, Fred here. In this installment of TPP Dynamite, I'm going to be discussing, you guessed it, how James Gunn's Superman is a failure, how there's simply no avoiding that obvious truth. First things first though, if you haven't already, let me encourage you to subscribe to my channel. I'm currently at just over 590 subscribers, and I'm really trying to reach 1,000 as soon as possible. I post film, book, and TV series reviews. I do opinion pieces on entertainment, news, and affairs. I'm also an author of adult and young adult mystery novels. I'm going to be releasing a new Hitchcockian short mystery called Gumbo Night at the top of next month. There's a link to it in my video description below, and I encourage you to pre-order that as well. With that in mind, and without further ado, I'm going to just jump right into it. So, this video is a follow-up and a sort of part 2 to my James Gunn Superman is going to fail video of about 9 months ago, where I broke down all the reasons for just why and how I knew that James Gunn's Superman was going to be an unavoidable box office failure, and where I predicted that the movie would not make any more than $600 million at the box office. And just to start, I do want to point out that Superman has officially left theaters and gone to streaming with a final box office total of $594.6 million. Now, the Gunn shields have been out in force since this movie first came out, but more specifically in recent days, since the final box office numbers came out, and since the movie went to streaming after a mere 35 days in theaters. And their primary argument has been that since the movie only had a budget of $225 million and made nearly $600 million against that, the movie is a runaway success, or they buy James Gunn's bald-faced falsehood to Screen Rant, which is itself a shield-adjacent outlet, that Superman is not leaving theaters due to its near-nil profitability, combined with the fact that the studio wants to try scraping in whatever additional pittance they can get for the film on streaming, but that the movie is being released for streaming due to mythical Peacemaker Season 2 release mechanics. But being a truth absolutist who enjoys exposing lies and who cannot stand the way that almost everyone, especially in media but also in major reviewer circuits, keeps covering for just how epically this movie is tanked, I decided to make this video to break it down for as many people as want the unadulterated, God's honest reality. And for the sake of clarity, I will do that breakdown according to the 3 most major points where I've heard the most persistent lies regarding this movie's financial failure. Alright, first and foremost, the box office returns. $594.6 million is quite a bit of money and would be a very respectable box office haul for most films that get released. However, for a movie like James Gunn's Superman, it is a flat financial failure for one very major reason, and that reason is the budget. The exact math is a bit debatable depending on which accountants you ask, but amongst those who understand the film business, it is generally understood that in order to be profitable, a movie needs to make between 2.5 and 3 times its total budget. Not its production budget, not its marketing budget, but its entire budget. And that's because, of course, a movie has to make the price of its own total budget just to break even, and because movie theaters tend to take roughly half the money made by the films that they play as their own price for playing the films. Now, James Gunn has been lying about or deflecting questions regarding the total budget of Superman for going on a year now, starting when he shot down questions by a poster on Threads about legal tax documents regarding the movie's budget, and his shields have been singing his same tune ever since, contending that the budget is not a penny more than $225 million, and arguing that anyone else who claims differently is malicious or misinformed or both. And that battle cry sounds pretty cool on paper, but it fails for 2 very major reasons. The first is that even if that amount were the film's total production budget, $225 million, James Gunn's Superman would still not exactly be a runaway success, because going by the film accountant's math, the movie would still need to make between $562.5 million and $675 million to be profitable, and thus it still would have only cleared about $30 million for Warner Brothers Discovery at the end of its theatrical run. Not exactly Christmas for a superhero film that was marketed with the name of Earth's most popular superhero attached. The second and more important reason, though, is that the battle cry is simply not true. Now, there are reports that have been disseminated by a wide variety of very reputable news sources, including Columbus Business First, a premier business journal in the state of Ohio, where James Gunn's Superman did a large amount of filming, affirming that the total budget on this movie was well near $364 million. And before you start up with that media can't be trusted fake news nonsense, those reports are backed up by literal public records that are internet accessible by everyone with Wi-Fi, that are associated with tax incentives for which Warner Brothers Discovery applied in the state of Ohio in conjunction with filming Superman there, and that clearly state the budget for the movie to be $363+ million. Now, maybe $225 million is the movie's budget excluding marketing, and $363+ million is the budget with it. Maybe Warner Brothers Discovery is planning on writing some of that massive budget off via tax incentives or some other financial loopholes, or maybe the company just inflated the total budget number in order to get to take advantage of better tax incentives or other financial loopholes. Nevertheless, $363 million plus is the budget that the company itself reported. And there are legitimate records to prove it, which means that despite anything that James Gunn and his entourage say on X or Threads or whatever, this movie needed to make roughly between $910 million and $1,092 million at the box office to be a box office success. Which brings me back to my original position that this movie, no matter how you slice it, was a box office failure and lost Warner Brothers Discovery hundreds of millions of dollars at the box office in the final analysis. Second point, the streaming records. This movie was pulled from theaters after only 35 days and released for streaming on HBO Max, which really is just another sign that it was not performing well at the end of its run, at least not well enough for Warner Brothers Discovery to think that it would make more money in theaters than whatever scraps the company could attempt raking back in the form of a streaming release. Because that's exactly what the company is going to make from this movie from streaming. Scraps. At least scraps compared to what movies of its kind tend to make over a similar period at the box office. And the fact that Warner Brothers Discovery refuses to release exact streaming data or financial data regarding just how much Superman has been making via streaming on HBO Max just makes me all the more certain that the answer is not much at all. Because if the movie were cleaning up financially on streaming, you'd better believe James Gunn and probably David Zaslav would be flaunting that win to everyone with ears. No, but instead they're tossing around nebulous praise about how the movie has been charting well on a select number of streaming lists that are conveniently most beneficial to their own self-congratulatory purposes, but that reveal literally nothing about whatever real profit the movie is or is not making on streaming, and that fail to account for how fast the movie is getting knocked out of those top spots within just a few days as newer streaming series and movies that people actually want to watch are released. Third and final point, the brand advancement. I'm pretty sure that I'd rather hear a donkey bray at midnight in a tin barn right now than hear one more corporate executive or one more unpaid Gunn shill or one more paid Gunn shill masking as an independent film reviewer / influencer repeat the lie that despite being a box office failure, Superman was still somehow magically not a failure because the box office isn't everything and because the movie succeeded in the most important arena for a superhero movie, and particularly a superhero movie in a cinematic universe, which is brand advancement. These are the people who will argue that the DCU had to make up a large amount of ground and audience trust after the failed DCEU, that it was understood that the first DCU movie might not make bank for that reason, that the first DCU movie only really needed to inspire trust in the audience again, like the first Iron Man movie did back in 2008 for the MCU. That the first DCU movie also needed to inspire the audience to buy themed merchandise, that James Gunn's Superman did do those things, and that the movie was a success because it did. Because it set up sub-franchises for Supergirl or Guy Gardner or Mr. Terrific or Hawkgirl or Jimmy Olsen or Peacemaker or blah-de-blah-de-blah. Lies, lies, lies. Yes, it is true that the DCU had to make up a large amount of ground and audience trust after the failed DCEU, and that it was a safe prediction before Superman came out that the first DCU movie might not make bank for that reason, and that the first DCU movie's first job did indeed need to be inspiring trust in the audience that the DCEU alienated, and that the first DCU movie also needed to ideally inspire the audience to buy themed merchandise. But any movie, be it a standalone superhero movie or a superhero movie in a cinematic universe, or even just a movie about a rabbit using the toilet, that is made at the price point associated with James Gunn's Superman does need to make a profit at the box office. It needs to make a huge profit at the box office, or it is what we in the common sense crowd call a big fat flop and a failure that loses the studio money like a drunken sailor. Then comes the fact that James Gunn's Superman did not accomplish any of those other tasks either. Unlike the first Iron Man movie, James Gunn's Superman did not go over well at all with particularly international audiences. It was a mid-movie at best that did not leave the audience wanting more or have any rewatch value. No one is lining up to see Peacemaker Season 2 or Lanterns or the rumored spin-off series about Mr. Terrific or about Jimmy Olsen. In fact, my bet is that those shows won't even graduate from the rumor stage of things into actual production. The Mr. Terrific and Jimmy Olsen series, Lanterns is already coming out, of course. No one is waiting to see random Clayface or Super Hurl next year. In fact, and I'm just putting this prediction out there like I did with Superman 9 months ago, I really don't think that the Super Hurl movie is making any more than $300 to $400 million, though I could see a scenario wherein it touches or breaks 500 million if it is marketed extremely well and is extremely well written and directed and acted. Just this movie is not going to make as much as even Superman did because Supergirl is not as popular a character as Superman is. Back to Superman though. This movie's only comparison to the first Iron Man is that they were both first movies and franchises that made roughly the same amount of money, though Superman had over twice Iron Man's budget and made roughly the same amount at the box office unadjusted for inflation since 2008, by the way, when Iron Man was released. Superman did not launch a franchise, and it is not moving merchandise in any meaningful way, by which I mean that sales on DC Comics books or other merchandise have not spiked since Superman came out to any level that would recover the hundreds of millions of dollars lost by Warner Brothers Discovery due to Superman's flopping. In fact, toy sales associated with this movie Superman have been abysmal, with stores and discount bins packed full of Superman and Justice Gang products that aren't selling because no one wants them. So in the end, yeah, James Gunn's Superman has officially and undeniably failed. It has failed at the box office. It has failed to meaningfully move merchandise. It has failed to powerfully launch a franchise that'll be profitable down the road. It is failing on streaming. Just globally, this movie has failed. Anyone who claims otherwise is misguided or malicious or both. Case closed, class dismissed. At any rate, that's just my opinion. Factually based and accurate though it is, let me know yours. Do you agree with me? Do you disagree? Are your feelings more complex? sound off in the comment section below. Meanwhile, if you like this video and made it this far, don't forget to leave a like, click subscribe, ring that bell, and hey, follow me on social media as well. So long.